COVID vaccines have changed the course of the pandemic. They prevented over 1 million deaths in the US and over 10.3 million hospitalizations in 2021. But what's equally impressive was the speed and efficiency in which they were created.
I've never seen the level of attempts at collaboration, like wanting to try and figure this out in public-private partnership form in my 20-year career.
However, the groundbreaking collaboration might be giving way to another looming battle on the horizon. A battle over who truly owns the COVID vaccine.
We're following a developing story. Moderna, the drug maker, locked in a fight with the NIH over its COVID vaccine.
These two entities have essentially been partners on the COVID vaccine, but now they are in a battle over one of the key patents behind it.
Patents have historically been viewed as important in part because they assure the company that if they are successful in getting the drug to market, that they stand to have essentially a monopoly on the rights to sell that drug for a certain period of time, typically, say, around 20 years.
Whenever there's a blockbuster drug, there are disputes about who owns it, who owns variations of it, who owns it for how long, and in what context. We are likely to see these battles playing out in the U.S. courts and in international courts for a long time to come.
Controversy over COVID vaccine patents has grabbed the attention of the world and the likes of President Biden and Bill Gates, and its outcome could have ramifications on how the world ends the pandemic. Like any other invention, vaccines are often covered by patents that provide legal protection against imitation. That's because investing in pharmaceutical research can be an expensive and risky gamble. On average, developing a new drug can range from less than $1 billion to more than $2 billion per drug. Yet just under 14% of all drugs in clinical trials eventually win approval from the FDA to make their way to the market.
There are tons and tons of research and development or patents or papers or initiatives that get spun up that never really go anywhere, that don't really see light of day. I did a general search, Google patents, anybody can do this, looked at vaccines for COVID, right? I found one that's known. I just literally said, how many other patents are sort of kind of like that? The number that's got spit out on Google patents was 134,000 patents. You would never know, never seen them, never heard about them, that all were somehow related to research in the area that led ultimately to that patent that saw market.
A successful patent, however, can often result in a big payoff. Not only does it give the inventor the sole right to produce and sell their products, but it also allows them to earn royalties whenever their patent is used to create a product.
Patents have historically been presented as a way to reward a company that has developed and brought a drug to the market and to compensate it for all of the costs that were incurred in getting it to the market. They stand to have essentially a monopoly on the rights to sell that drug for a certain period of time, typically, say, around 20 years.
Lawsuits over valuable pharmaceutical patents have been common throughout history.
A fair percentage of the litigation that happens in the United States relates to pharmaceutical patents. Our legal system spends a lot of time trying to figure out who owns what and what are the boundaries of those rights. Pharmaceutical patents, if they lead particularly to blockbuster medicines, have a lot of money at stake. So that means there are a lot of resources to hire lawyers to try to argue over who owns what.
In November 2021, a similar conflict broke out over the COVID-19 vaccine, putting Moderna at odds with the U.S. government. Moderna collaborated with the researchers at the National Institute of Health, a federal agency, to develop their vaccine, Spikevax. When Moderna excluded the NIH researchers as co-inventors and a central patent covering the mRNA sequence, NIH publicly challenged the patent, arguing that 3 of its scientists made meaningful contributions to its research.
When you have large industry, you have government, and you're trying to blend commercial interest with governmental do-good interest, there's always going to be some kind of natural tension. and that's to be expected.
They are arguing over methods of stabilizing the spike protein within the vaccine. So it's critically important to the Moderna vaccine, who actually owns that. If the government is listed on the patent, then it has remarkable control over what the parties can do with it.
While Moderna eventually backed down in their fight against the NIH, the dispute could foreshadow more to come. Another dispute can potentially rise over NIH's patent for the spike protein that allows the vaccine to induce a stronger immune response. While companies like Pfizer paid money to obtain a license from NIH, Moderna did not. Moderna could also be facing another patent infringement lawsuit by Arbutus Biopharma Corp., a company with a similar patent on its delivery system. Multiple reports surrounding Moderna's patent complications haven't helped with the company's dwindling performance in the market. In October 2020, Pfizer was also sued by Allele Biotechnology and Pharmaceuticals for allegedly using their proteins in their vaccine testing that infringe on their existing patent.
I do anticipate going forward that we're going to see more lawsuits and disputes arise over COVID-19 vaccine patents. I think at some level it's pretty much unavoidable.
We are likely to see these battles playing out in the U.S. courts and in international courts for a long time to come.
The COVID vaccine patents can also pose other threats beyond legal conflict. Patents within the U.S. also extend throughout the world, thanks to an international agreement known as TRIPS. Some experts argue this is why vaccines are less accessible in lower-income countries.
The existence of patents and specifically intellectual property protections does two things. One is it limits how much manufacturing there can be of that product or that vaccine. And the other thing that it does is it keeps the price of that product and vaccine artificially high, or keeps it high enough that it limits the ability of other countries in the world, particularly low middle income countries, to be able to purchase those vaccines.
In response, calls to waive the patents on COVID vaccines have continuously gained traction throughout the world.
Some of the recent ideas that have been floated include things known as patent waivers, which is basically saying, okay, you may have a patent, but we're going to administratively say that patent no longer gives you protection in the market. You have to give your recipe away to everybody in an effort to get more vaccines out there to help get us as a global economy back on fair footing.
In October 2020, India and South Africa first brought the matter to the spotlight after formally proposing the WTO to waive intellectual property rules over the COVID vaccines. While patents might have a place in the normal world, the hope is that the pandemic could force countries to consider an exception.
Until we have full vaccination around the world, we're going to continue to see new variants arise. And every time there's a new variant, we're going to realize very quickly that it's not possible to contain that variant in just one part of the world.
The world can't wait. It certainly can't wait 20 years for the patent to end, but it can't even wait for the period of time necessary to get through the existing waiver processes.
There is also the question of ethics. The U.S. government played a major role in funding the vaccine. Research from 2021 discovered that most of the technology used for the COVID vaccine was mostly funded by the public sector. So, is it ethical for drug companies to make a profit off of their patents?
The reason that public investment happens is that we're trying to protect the public from new diseases, protect and improve the health of the public. And so I do think there are some major concerns with specific companies making large amounts of profits from drugs that were developed in part with federal government support. And moreover, when the health of the public is also suffering at the same time.
But not everyone is in support of a patent waiver. Critics argue that such an unprecedented move will only have dire consequences in the long run.
If we create that slippery slope of patents are devalued because legally they're not protected anymore at a global level, we're going to be disincentivizing innovation at a massive, massive level.
There is also conflicting opinion on whether a waiver can actually improve global vaccine distribution. Bill Gates also originally spoke out against the patent waiver, arguing that there are problems beyond patents that stay in the way of global vaccination, although he later reversed his position.
If you don't have the actual healthcare infrastructure that can deliver those You don't have the logistics and transportation components that are there. Having 1 billion vaccines sitting in a warehouse of a lab that's developing it will do no good for society and getting us back to normal.
While the debate remains a hot topic among scholars throughout the world, many express doubts on whether a patent waiver can actually come to fruition.
The likelihood that at a global level, because it's not a U.S. decision, it's a global World Intellectual Property Organization decision, to be clear, that we will get to a point where we're going to say, yeah, we're going to use a TRIPS waiver in this case, I doubt it very seriously.
I think we had the best hope of it was last year when there was a proposal that was put forward at the WTO, and the Biden administration had supported it. But we had European countries that objected to those patent waivers.
No matter the outcome, the current debate over intellectual property will have a lasting impact on global public health.
This is not the last pandemic, and it's not the last epidemic we are going to face. Now, these questions of how we encourage innovation, how we make sure it spreads through the world in an accessible manner, these are issues that will plague us long after COVID-19, hopefully, God willing, has been solved and we've learned to live with it.